Good evening, everyone. As host for season 2 at HR at 8 pm, I welcome you all to a knowledge session of ABCDE Academia, Business, Consulting, Development, and Entrepreneurship. It is time for the 11th session of Food for Thought brought to you every Friday evening by a bunch of volunteers. So, time now to relax as the weekend begins and listen to a very interesting topic of CSR as a way forward to Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs as they're called. Please put your mic on mute and listen. Your questions and comments are most welcome at the end of the presentation. The speaker for the day today is Dr. Ashok Das, founder CEO of Sunmoksh. The moderator will be Renu Bohra, who is the CHRO of DB Schenker, world's leading global logistics provider. Over to you, Renu. The floor is yours now.
Let me introduce him to the August gathering by saying that Dr. Ashok Das is the founder CEO of Sunmoksha, a company focused on clean technology solutions for sustainable socio-economic development of rural hinterland. Dr. Das has a decade of hands-on experience in working on rural socio-economic development with state-of-the-art technology interventions, smart microgrids, renewable energy, and smart irrigation. Lot of smart term here. Based on his on-the-ground assessment of the real issues of rural development, he has developed state-of-the-art comprehensive technology solution and business models to address these issues. His innovations have received several national and international awards and accolades. It's a privilege to have him with us. He has also consulted in technology, business, market research, and advisory services to several national and international organizations such as World Bank, UK DFID, KFW, ADB, GIZ, IFC, Ashton IRC, ORIDA, HCL Foundation, C-STEP, and PFAN. Prior to funding Sunmoksha, he worked over a decade for semiconductor equipment manufacturer Applied Materials, and then headed the India operations of a fab automation startup, Aquas System, both in the Silicon Valley. He's a BTech from IIT Kanpur and PhD from University of Southern California, Los Angeles. A very impeccable background. It's a pleasure to have with us. When I was speaking to him in the morning, I said, how would you like to introduce yourself? He said, I'm a villager at heart. So my pleasure to invite the village boy living in Bangalore with a global footprint. So over to you, Dr. Das, for taking us through a remarkable evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was too long. So I muted myself. All right. It is a privilege to be speaking to all of you here. You are all, special professionals working on the core issue of development, that is the humans. So, when I was speaking to Indranil and Atul, I said, what do you want me to talk about? So he said, hey, focus on sustainable development goals. And they came up with the topic that how can CSR be used as a way forward to achieve the sustainable development goals. So what are these goals? I think most of you are aware and familiar with these goals, with the 17 goals, focusing on poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, clean water, sanitation, energy, again, work, industry, inequalities. As you can see, all of these are primarily pointing towards, how do we make the world more sustainable and more inclusive. And that is what the overarching goal of sustainable development is. Now let's look at how many of these goals, relate to the problems around the world, and especially in India. We are facing several challenges. I will confine myself primarily to the rural India because that is where our working, that is where a lot of effort is needed. So it's agriculture and water problems. There is always this rich, poor, and urban rural divide, and I believe that it's primarily leads to is because of SDG 8. Income, decent income, again poverty, inequalities, and the very recent ones about this migration. Tackle development. That such extremities don't happen in future. Relate some of these to the so-called CSR Act and what are the various things that are allowed under CSR Act. Eradicating extreme poverty and hunger, directly related, right? So no poverty, no hungers. Goals 1, 2. Promotion of education, no questions asked. Goal 4. Promoting gender equality, women empowerment. Goal 5. Reducing child mortality and improving mental, ensuring environmental sustainability, definitely goals 7 and 13. Employment enhancing vocational activities, so it's not for quality education, but it also to create decent livelihood and create micro industries and train people to get into those vocational education. So goal 4 has a really a larger perspective, not only creating quality education overall, but also vocational skills. Social business projects, it can fall into any of these SDGs. A contribution to PM National Fund, I don't know where all it falls in. It depends on what the fund is being used for. And then most rural development projects qualify for CSR. It's just a little bit of mapping where we are and how we can really take these mandates forward by focusing on some of these. So how do we really address it? 17 goals, too complex, vast canvas, and to tackle one at a time. I also believe that there has been too much focus on activities that yield short-term results, and it has resulted in a disjointed effort. If you want to eradicate poverty, you say, okay, go give them money. You want to eradicate hunger, oh, give them food. Don't have good health, okay, create some medicine, give them some medicine, give them some kits. Education, make some effort to get them educated, make some buildings, etc. So there have been multiple effort, but I feel that is there a the question is there a systematic way to address these SDGs for a long term impact? Because this short term impact just give a short term effort give you short term impact, but eventually we keep going into cycles. Poverty has, we have been talking about 70 years in India, garibi hatao, garibi abhi bhi utni hi hai. So why there needs to be some systematic way to change that and systematic way to tackle that. What is that? From our perspective, what I believe is the SDG 8 is a key. I have a question for the August audience here. We all talk about poverty, hunger, health, education, etc. Why none of the people in this forum today are we at all worried about those? No, right? You can take care of education, you can take care of hunger, poverty, everything. And what is the difference? The difference essentially is that if you have enough economic means so that we can take care of ourselves. So if we really focus on 8 and give everybody enough economic growth, decent work, and enough livelihood, they can themselves go and take care of their hunger. The poverty will be eradicated automatically. They can go and take care of their health. They can go and they take care of the education. Equality will reduce. Gender equality will increase. This is the result of the focus on one goal, that economic empowerment is the key. And of course, as time progresses in the long term, you will achieve the sustainable communities and peace and justice on this earth. If everybody has enough to eat and live and raise families and give everybody good education. Why would there be a fight? Okay, if you look around all the fight, it's because of only two things, either need or greed. So I don't know how to take care of the greed, but at least need we can deal and we can take care by working on SDG 8. How do we do it? So our principle is again E3 and P3. E3 is entrepreneurship, education, whereas education includes skills and empowerment. If you just throw things at the beneficiary, it doesn't go much unless they are empowered to take care of themselves, right? So the idea is creating millions of micropreneurs earning tens and thousands of, well, I have dollars here, but in Hindi, create crores of lakhpatis than a few crorpatis. How do we do that? How do we democratize the wealth? And that is by focusing on eight. Okay. So that is where all the value propositions that we develop is around eight, that what can, and every village and every community has a different value proposition depending on where the community is. It has to be anchored in the people, planet, and progress, because we have had too much focus on the R part or the rupee part, and both people and planet have gone for a toss. How do we make sure that our development efforts are balanced and take care of the climate 13, 14, and 15? So these are the two, sort of principles that we work on. So E3 plus P3 gives you sustainable socio-economic development, where we focus on economic growth here and the climate, and eventually we achieve a sustainable socio-economic development. We must realize that every community this whole development process is a staged process. I cannot go and make the intervention at one time and assume that now the development is finished, because the community moves from one stage to another and their needs keep changing, and different kinds of interventions are needed at that level of the community to keep moving them up the value chain and keep moving from one stage to another stage. I will give you some examples that how we believe we are trying to do that, and how do we systematically bring about this change. So our principles are more or less focused on Dr. Kalam's Pura village. And we are trying to create that provision of urban amenities in rural areas. That is the key to the development of rural India and reverse migration, if you say. And that is the only way we can eventually achieve the Gram Swaraj that we have talked about for many years, but it's still an illusion to achieve that Gram Swaraj. So we focus on empowering farmers and villagers to improve their lives. So as one of my farmers, Mukhia told me that pani hai to kisan hai, bijli hai to roji hai. So water and energy are two key components, and the whole village economy is centered around food production. So agriculture is a major activity in the village and in the rural areas, and we are trying to focus on all the stages of agriculture, whether it is a pre-harvesting, harvesting, and post-harvesting, or as they call it, farm to fork. So how do we bring value to the farmers in this whole chain of farm to fork, anchored again in the P3 of people, planet, and progress. So this is the goal, and we have solutions for all of these goals. We have developed Smart Aquanet to deal with the pre-harvesting, Smart Nanogrid basically cuts across the whole chain of energy, and Smart Microeconomic Zone for the post-harvesting or these are again anchored in different SDGs 6, 7, and 9. Again, we do everything so that there is a balance between people, planet, and profit and progress. And by doing this, we are also touching upon SDG 12, that how do we make uh, food production responsible. It should be sustainable production of food, and not a scenario where now more than half the India is reeling under the water issues. Is that a sustainable production? Certainly not. Another key important or key part of our intervention, our model, is a local partnership. So whether it is a global or local, but more local than global. Global, we go for something different, but local partnership with the villagers are the key, where we can go and make that dent. We have to be working with them, working with the local people, and that is where the entire effort lies. Most of our solutions have won national and international awards and recognition, giving us more confidence that we are on the right path of techno solutions, techno social solutions. What is our theory of change? Is that you focus on 8 outcomes we can achieve through 8 inputs or interventions are our solutions, technology solutions, together with the local partnership. These are anchored in our climate P3 model of P3 anchors of sustainability. And it's not that you do, it's a linear process. You do once and you're done. No, it goes into cycles. It repeats because different kinds of interventions are needed at different level, so that eventually the community goes into the sustainable community, achieving peace and justice. So this is more or less how we believe and what we are trying to do. How this so systematic change is that you go make interventions in the village. So smart interventions such as energy, water, resource utilization, whatever is the need of the village, that gives access to resources, access to connectivity, livelihood for the people, and that eventually catalyzes the whole process of development and development in the ecosystem for the economic growth and quality of life. So employment and entrepreneurship, skill development, women and youth empowerment, all enabled by technology. So how can CSR funds help achieve some of this sustained impact? As I said, many times I have seen many CSR activities going and doing a short-term impact. Yes, I have benefited. I saw we gave 10,000 lanterns to the family. We did well. But then that doesn't last long. That lantern is gone in 3 months, 6 months. So how do we go and do things, and then the community, the CSR effort moves away from that village. It goes somewhere else. And then there is nobody to look after them. So our model is that it has to be a long-term commitment, and funds should be utilized to catalyze long-term development, not just a short-term output. Creating livelihood, creating micro entrepreneurship opportunities, engaging the youth, skilling them, and making them micro entrepreneurs. Make sure women are empowered, right? Funds impact should be extended over several years. If I, just one example I give, that if I do, a home lighting system or a solar lantern, I'm an energy guy. That impact is not going to be lasting too long. It just gives them light. But if I give a microgrid, or if I give them power, then the whole development process starts, and there is a long-term impact in the village and in the community. And of course, there has to be accountability on the part of the implementing agency, scalability. How can I go into multiple places? And transparency. So transparency is one of the things that was key to our own measures and metrics. That how do I make sure that the funds investors are transparently monitored, and through that transparency you bring continuity of engagement. So because continuity of engagement with the beneficiary is equally important. If you just lose the continuity, your efforts and your funds and your CSR activity that you did are negated again. And for that transparency and continuity is where we bring technology, so that there is a local support. We are talking technology such that the people in the village can use it. There is a remote command center where we can support, we can look at the solutions, we can look at the problems and address and provide the ongoing support to the villagers or to the project. and bring the customer, make it easy for the customers to interact with our systems. And this data is available to everybody, the CSR folks, all the stakeholders can look at the data and make sure that yes, what we promised is what we have delivered. But more than that, it helps us do the operations and support so that we can scale and provide sustainability. Right. So, from day one, you engage with the youth in the village, you hire them, you make them part of the implementation, and then one of them become your operators, and a few of them together start to run the whole system and make them sustainable. So we, in fact, have developed the entire model of what are the various ways that we should be doing this whole entire village development. So step 1, 2, 3. This entire model is being built and being tested. There are multiple of tools being developed so that we can have a long-term sustained relationship with the community that we are engaged with. We have been working with international research collaborators on many of these solutions, and actually a lot of these things have come. And one of the engagement really started with CSR, that how do I provide, give CSR a value, show them that why should they choose one intervention versus other? What is the long-term impact? And on that one, develop a model to develop the value proposition. And then there is another model, system dynamics, which builds scenarios, which evaluate your policy that, hey, if I do this intervention, what will happen? And how do I choose between the 5 interventions that I'm thinking? What will give me most impact? So those are the various system models and tools that we have ended up developing to help the CSR folks. Moderator, it's opposite. We just started with irrigation, and it has given them enough income that they have gone straight into agri outlets. And so depending on what is required in which village, that is how the assessment needs to be done, that what do the beneficiary want, rather than we going and say this is what you need. So that is the difference, and that is how even the CSR needs to think, that how do I make my intervention desired, or desired by the community? What do the community really needs, rather than what I want to give? So I'll just walk you through some of these examples that we did with CSR funds, and there were some background certain problems. Like this is the Chotki, where we started with CSR fund. They wanted to do a remote village, they wanted to solarize the whole village, and we had a ready-made village for that, and we saw the changes. But again, in this situation, the CSR agency did this and then said, okay, we are done, right? But that is where the whole problem came, because we also said we did it and we are done, but we were not done. So it was a big learning for us. And this village has again got so many other interventions that this has gone back to darkness, and we are now trying to revive it. So we had a lot of learning in this village, that how do we really need to engage with these communities, how do we really need CSR needs to, and we are talking to the funder again, the companies that sponsored it, and they are very keen. They said, yes, this is a very good project, we need to continue. What does it need to get continued? So there are 2-3 things we have identified that needs, and community engagement is one of the key component that we could not do in this village. And we have, now we need to go and engage with someone who can really make this community engagement work. So we learned from this and then went to the second village. This is an island. And here we did a lot of community engagement. We worked with them. We finally understood. It was a very challenging project because it's an island. It was flooded. 3-4 months it was flooded. Projects get delayed. And even today now, there are some issues on the field, and whatever the local operator has been able to fix it, he has fixed it, but now we cannot go there to fix the rest. So there are a lot of challenges, and that is why we have focused on training the locals to go and take care of as many things as possible. And we are monitoring it remotely. So here again, we have just gone into the first phase, and the second phase is irrigation. There is no water, underground water on this island. So now we have finally identified a place where to get the water from the river, where there is a perennial, because the upper side of the river dries after the flooding. So the lower side of the river is the only place we have to get the water, and we are working on that solution to get the water, then start working on the microeconomic. The entire development of our Aquanet started with a CSR request that, hey, we have a village, we have these farmers communities, how do I make it sustainable, intervention, because I don't want to keep giving money after we have given the initial capital. So that is where we developed a sustainable shared irrigation model. Billing and payment, everybody pays for the water they use, there is an operator who will running it, and we are using smart technologies to make sure that I have an accountability of which farmer is getting how much water. And the second level of intervention is that, are you using the right amount of water? So putting sensors, putting intelligent artificial intelligence, learning database, creating database, so that we can guide the farmers that, hey, for these farm, for this kind of a crop, this kind of a land, this is the amount of water you need, this is the amount of fertilizer you need. And we have been working on that. The solution has gone even abroad. So this is our first installation that we did in Rwanda. Again, a community model where an aquapreneur, so we are creating aquapreneurs everywhere, that he will be the one who will own and has some skin in the game, and then go and operate it as a livelihood activity. So he generates his own livelihood as well as improves the livelihood of all the farmers around him. This is a this is a project in microeconomic zone where, at the center of where we have taken a wasteland, and this wasteland will be converted into a hub of activity of various livelihood activities, that and there is a linkage to market where the excess from this livelihood activity can be sold outside, and eventually it will be powered by a smart nanogrid, and the entire village feeds into it. So for example, the reasons we have chosen these kind of activities, that say sal leaf processing. So sal leaf is collected throughout the village in all the 14 villages, and but it will be processed here. So there is enough economies of scale to make sure that there is a full supply chain of whatever you produce. It has enough market, and it can go into the market and fetch additional income for the villagers. In this village, we also don't have a clinic, so we are setting up a health clinic. We are setting up it will have a bank ATM. So the facilities that the villagers require, you give them. Similarly, cold room, so lemon is there, so to preserve the lemons, to preserve the tomatoes, we are setting up a cold room there so that they can have a breathing room. Start with Aquanet, grow more food, put some food processing. Eventually, we can develop the smart microeconomic zone and finally achieve the Pura village that we all desire, and the Gram Swaraj. Okay. So some of the awards that we have won, our solutions are equally welcome in these countries in Africa. And this is the way that we want to take that kid from the street to make him self-dependent and very productive in his own environment in the village. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Das,
Yeah.
for a very grassroots level and original talk. I think the initiatives shown here are quite fundamental and path-breaking. With this, we will open the house for questions and Q&A round. Dr. Das, the question is, what role do women play primarily in rural settings?
From my perspective, in say in our area where we are running a microgrid, Desi Power is running it for a long time, and two women are the one who run it. Okay. So wherever we go, our goal has been that we get women involved, we create livelihood we suggest livelihood opportunities and businesses that women can do at home. And the men are very migrant, the men are very mobile, whereas the women, we believe, are the one who can really provide the anchor for the village. And that is where our whenever we have tried, whatever we have been able to, we have tried to get women involved. It was on, I had a very interesting experience in Kudgaon, and actually even in Chotki, that our team was all male. So we had no participation from any female in the village. And the same thing happened in Kudgaon. But in the last leg of our implementation, I sent one of our female engineers. And believe me or not, the amount of engagement we got from the women was tremendous. And she was mostly talking to all women, and she understood what they want. Some of them want to start school, some of them want to start, Silai machine, some of which we were not able to figure out, as we did not have access to. So I also believe that in our team, in the team, there has to be a, a women component if we want to empower the women. And for that we are now trying constant effort to bring women to the village to get engaged with them.
Thank you, Arvind Jha. And the question is about, is CSR the only funding model to scale these solutions across our villages? Can CSR scale this to say 10 to 20% of villages across India?
But there are many models, and actually the CSR, here it was a CSR one, but the eventual model is finally the business model, right? If things have to scale up, if things have to uh, go beyond this development activity, there are multiple models that needs to be created, and we believe that business model is the right model. Unfortunately or fortunately, the sectors that we are working in intersects too much with the government and infrastructure development. So that is where the entire hindrance has been, but that is our experience because of the way we are doing. But say, for example, in the irrigation sector, we are impacting, and it's a business model we create. Perhaps what needs to be done is a combination of funds where some equity is provided, uh, some equity comes from the entrepreneur, some debt comes from the bank, and there could be a gap funding. So that gap funding could be even from us as a developer, we become part of it, or it could be funded by some CSR funds. But there are some gaps that is still there because the demographics that we are serving really doesn't have that kind of a wealth. So how do we help them still come up the value chain? And that is where various kinds of business model we are also trying to do, and that you are also trying to work on various business models. But eventually, to catalyze the whole thing, I believe CSR alone is not sufficient. CSR has limited access, and it has to find different models. And we are willing to listen to different any other suggestions. We ourselves have some I had one slide where I had shown all the kinds of funding that can go into a project and how we can make it sustainable. The goal is that it should not be a capex project, it should be an opex project, that you don't just give capital and say you're done. I have to create ways to maintain it, operate it, and run it by the locals. And that is where a lot more commitment is required than, and that is where I believe that one lesson or one effort that CSR can do is how do we engage with the community for a long time. I was speaking to one of the young folks at Tata Trust. And she also says that, we are realizing that we go and we engage with the community for a very short time. And after that, we don't know what has happened. So my effort, her effort was to create a long-term sustainable engagement with the community so we can keep moving with the community as they improve. And that gives much more satisfaction.
How do you tackle local politics by panchayats?
I will tell you one thing. The one lesson that we learned is to do things without them and then let them come and say, oh, you have done it. Now I want to do more. Okay. That has happened. And the another thing is also that if if, for example, one of the MPs came and said, how could you do this? How did you do this project without even informing me? But if you inform them, then there are more, there are other issues. So yes, politicians, but panchayat, in every village, we deal with the sarpanch. We make sure that the village president is part of this whole effort. And if he is bought in, then he can handle the top. So we have a bottom up approach. You go and work with the guy who is directly going to work with you and let him handle the top. And most of the time when you go and say that, hey, we are here to make you that Atmanirbhar or make you more economically strong, hardly any panchayat, hardly any sarpanch, etc. say no to it.
Yeah, thank you. Well noted. One question from Ashit Sinha, and I think it resonates with what you just now said. The question is that, is there any Atmanirbhar model?
Sir, we have been working on this Atmanirbhar even before the word Atmanirbhar was advertised and made political. So every model we have developed is an Atmanirbhar model. I don't know if you saw and if you heard. Every place we go has to be locally sustained, locally, the technology is not something that they should be afraid of, and they should be able to handle it, and they are empowered. See, empowerment is even more than Atmanirbhar. If the community is empowered, if the community can take care of themselves and take care of, you just catalyze. Our focus and our goal has been empowering lives, catalyzing development. I'm not going to say that I will do all the development. Our goal is to catalyze it. And we don't want to interfere with the local politics. We don't want to interfere with the local customs, religions, etc. Everybody's fine for us. Everybody's same. All we want to do is, I want to catalyze that community to go and do something.
Very empowering message, very empowering. There's one more question from Arijit. I hope I'm reading the name correctly. Arijit Chandra Majumdar. And it says that, Dr. Das, do you think in India, CSR activities by the corporate is done in right earnest?
I think it's both. I think there are, so far we had mostly positive experience. Whoever has worked with us, they had a right and earnest intention to impact the beneficiary. Okay. And it always depends on what your management is and how your management wants to do it. But so far, our experience has been positive. I know there are one or two negative experiences, which is okay, but I would not say that it is not in earnest. Whoever tried to does it, most of them are really doing it with the intent that they want to help the beneficiary.
Thank you. I think we are now in the fag end of our talk. So I would request I would request Mr. Atul Bhatnagar to present the summary. And
thanks, Renu, and thanks, Ashok, for this enlightening talk. The way I'd sum it is, the key takeaways I could get from your talk were, one is, of course, the SDGs are based on the bottom of the pyramid. That's where we have to look at. The activities of CSR, they leading to the goals are in direct relation. And you showed that very nicely. How do we address SDGs? Well, it has to be a systematic way to create impact. I think that's very key to this whole talk that we just went through. And the E3 plus P3 equal to a sustainable socioeconomic development sounded very much like a IIT equation, but let me simplify it. E3 is education, entrepreneurship, and empowerment. And P3 is planet, people, and progress. So if we focus on these things, I think we can create impact on the socioeconomic development of a village or of any particular region, let's say. Then it's very important to see a staged process. I think that's very clear now that we don't have to spend money once, but it has to be a staged process. Food water nexus, the technologies that you showed address that, and the theory of change which Sanmoksh follows. So there is a science behind, and there's a kind of a path to progress and the way to achieve Pura goals of Abdul Kalam ji and Mahatma Gandhi ji's Gram Swaraj. These are kind of talks right now, but I think what you did very well by showing how can we address that and what is the path for those. Um, then funds for several years impact objectives of this particular talk, that we should not just be focusing on providing short-term impact through lighting. Yes, it is very important. Look, we need to have electricity in the home, we need some light in the night, but can we produce something which can also monitor whether that's being used, or can that be sustainable? And instead of light, can we provide power instead? That becomes a long-term impact that we can create and across many years. And the technology that you're talking about provides transparency and continuity. That's a very essential item for any CSR or any kind of donor who wants to see impact in a particular region. Transparency and continuity can only come through technology. And at the end of it, the learnings, I think the learnings are very clear. It's coming to, you have to have continuity engagement. And that's where I think even the women can be really the empowering agents in the village. As you rightly said, they are the ones who anchor the village, whereas the men are a bit mobile and a migrant, and they can move off the moment they start earning more money. But the women being there in the current situation can really become the anchor for development and in the rural areas. So I would stop at that. How do we catalyze development? It's very heartening to hear how in a very systematic way through women itself, I'm not saying that's the only way to go ahead, but this is one place where women empowerment can lead to a very big impact in the rural settings. So thanks for that.
We can call Arijit Da.
Good evening, everybody. It was an excellent presentation and great meeting, Dr. Das. CSR being a topic of interest for many, I'm sure they will find a lot of meat in it. And I think for Dr. Das, it was time too short for the session. And we would sincerely look forward for another session. Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
And last but not least, I'd just like to thank Indraneel. He does all the background work, talking and getting the... Thank you very much, all the audience. Have a good weekend. And this was food for thought. Now you can head for food for stomach. Dinner is waiting.